Welcome back to Timeless Mindset. In this episode, we're joined by Boris Walter. He's a psychotherapist, a hypnotherapist who specializes in past life regressions. Now, this conversation was unreal. We explored so many cool topics such as hypnosis, spirituality. We actually really dug into emotions, and it was almost like a bit of a mini therapy session for myself. But a lot of thought-provoking topics that we got into. So if you're someone who is engaged with self-improvement, self-growth, and really wants to understand emotions and thinking and life, now this is the perfect episode for you. And right near the back end of the episode, we touch into past life regressions and uncover some really cool stories. But overall, it was a sick conversation, and we definitely need to bring Boris back. But for now, enjoy this episode, and I'll see you on the other side. Before we begin, let's take a moment to thank our sponsor, RecLab. Pete and his team down in Wembley have an incredible service for you. Perth's first ever fully dedicated recovery centre. They've got everything you need, from hot and cold plunge pools, a steam room, hyperbaric chamber, compression boots, traditional sauna. All of these are designed to get you at your best and keep you there. Not only this, but the place is designed to foster community and a sense of belonging. It's the perfect place to catch up with mates while also improving your overall well-being. Their memberships are on sale now, so head to reclab.com.au to secure yours now. And if you mention myself, Egan, or the podcast Timeless Mindset, you'll get some free merchandise when you sign up.
Everyone is going through something.
I think that you can actually do anything you set your mind to.
If someone were to ask you who you are and what you stand for, you should be able to answer that question.
You got to be grateful for where you're at.
I don't really want to have all these cuddles. This is your role. Step up.
Anyways, Boris,
Yeah,
thanks for coming on the podcast.
you're welcome, Egan.
Something I was thinking about was subjective value of other people, because for me, I'm really excited to have this conversation. But you notice with famous people, right? Sometimes I'm not calling you famous, but
Let's pretend I'm famous. It feeds the ego.
yeah. But you go to some countries and people wouldn't know who they are, right?
Mm.
But people's sense of self is derived from other people knowing who they are. But I find that fascinating, how it's just relying on other people upholding that and how fragile that is.
Mm.
And even sometimes myself over my journey, I've noticed almost craving that respect and validation from other people. But that's so fragile when I look at it now. But so many people are conditioned, probably without even realizing it, to be so reliant on other people upholding their sense of self.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Straight into a massive, massive topic. Do you want me? I'll speak to the nature of that. We're all victim to that, right? We all are, because we have an ego. So I guess what you're talking about is a social identity that we adhere to, and we identify so much with all of its characteristics that when it's hurt or it's denied or it's abused, disrespected, dishonored, not considered, then we get hurt because we over-identify with it. When I say it is the social identity. It's the mask. It's the thing that you're saying seeks validation. But hear me when I'm saying it, and then I identify with it. It's not me, and it's not you. It's something we've put on to survive here socially. It's not the essence of you. And why we can even talk about a separation, why it's valid to talk about a separation, is because when someone goes down the path of understanding it, looking at it, studying it, and recognizing that there are tendencies about me, that when someone says this about me or does that to me, I react like this. So there's this phenomena of observing its nature. So by default, I must not be it because I can observe it. So by default, you see how the awakening person, the person that's becoming self-aware, starts to recognize that I am not my impulses. I'm not the thing that's being hurt or triggered. It's a part of me. So there's the first awakening moment is a recognition that there are parts to me. There is a social identity that I have over-identified with for significant survival reasons to get along in this game called life, human life, and my over-identification of it, I've believed all the stories of the ego. I need to be cool. I need to look like this. I need to sound like this. I need this kind of work. Whatever its demands are, you've over-identified with it. And therefore, you're a victim to it. And that's why you see mental health suffering and nervousness, anxiety. Anxiety is because an over-attachment to the identity of your social character when it's not you. It's just a part of you that you've created and you've over-identified with it. And now you believe that when it is hurt, you are hurt. So the awakening process is the slow disillusionment that you are not it. You are this thing that observes it, but you're truly never hurt.
What makes, in our formative experiences, why do we have this social identity? What's the reasoning, and how do we become slowly, as you call it, this dissolution from it?
Yeah. So you're, okay, let's use metaphor here. So we're playing a game, right? And you get invited to the game. You've just entered the game. There's a whole bunch of people playing this game, right? It's a board game. It's quite a complex board game, right? Well, because you've entered the circle, you've entered the game, it's pretty important that you figure out the rules of the game first, right? So you can at least sustain your existence within the game. Okay, cool. It actually doesn't matter too much yet about your needs and wants and who likes you, doesn't like you, and all that stuff. But you need to understand the laws and the rules of the game. So by default, you need to come in with, you're not going to know it, but people that invite you to the game are going to be like, all right, look, here's what you say. Here's what you don't say. Here's how you should act. Here's how you shouldn't act. This is what makes me upset. This is what makes mum upset, dad upset. If you're more like this, then you get more love. You do less of that, you get less love. And all of a sudden, you start being established in this game. Culture, you know, what's it like to be human? What's it like to be a male? What's it like to be a child? What's it like? Who can I trust? Who can't I trust? Am I safe? Am I not safe? You start picking up all the rules of the game so you can exist in the game long enough, right? And so it's most significant to first hit that lower rung of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and make sure you can physically survive, which your parents will take care of, hopefully. But then the most next significant thing is, can I play by the rules of the game? Can I exist here so I'm not alienated, isolated? Right? It's one of those things that we have to contend against, to fight off or stave off isolation. One way to insanity is to be isolated from humans. Right? That's how you have no mirrors. Like humans are mirrors, so I can bounce ideas off you, bounce them back off me, and I can stay sane. That just means at least adhere to the social rules. So we get that there are flaws in the ego and the social normality and all that, but it allows sustainability and communication through a group. So your social intelligence, which is attached to your ego, your identification with this mask that we're talking about, it has to be developed so you understand the rules of the game, right? So you can sustain yourself in a group long enough to find meaning, to find love, connection, belongingness. Tick that rung. And then that'll compel you to something more significant, to start asking bigger questions about this reality in yourself. But if you have isolation, you don't have people around you, you can't find belongingness. It means you haven't understood the rules of the game of engagement in a social setting. We're social creatures, which means the ego is the mask in which you will learn to play the game. And then once you've understood that, okay, I've ticked all the boxes, I can make friends, I can find love, I can lose love, I get it. Now you can actually start to play with the mask and see if you can lower the mask, drop the mask, because it doesn't have much to do with your essence. But that's what I'm saying is it's a survival thing. You need to establish an ego to exist in a social world.
So it's out of fear in order to survive. Like it's a survival mechanism.
Yeah.
To ensure that what we just can reproduce and pass on to the next generation.
Not to what we can pass on. It's more so if you're a naive little narcissistic child, which is what all babies come into the world like, little omnipotent narcissistic little things, right? They think everyone is an extension of them, right? Why is mum going over there all of a sudden? She should be here feeding me, tending to my needs, right? That's very normal, right? But then you can't exist thinking that everyone on this earth is here to serve you. Obviously, that's when you see someone that isn't individuated or haven't got a healthy egoic development, you will see them, that's a narcissist, someone that's had a fractured identity. And so what happens is, for me to keep receiving love from mum, keep receiving love from dad, or whoever the primary caretakers are, I have to start adapting my behavior by sacrificing an authentic part of me. I just want this, or I want to be crying, I'm vulnerable, I need this, but my needs aren't being tended to. It doesn't make sense. Okay, if I adjust my behavior and I'm more tough, maybe dad will like me more. Or maybe if I do more of this, mum will be a bit more stable, and then she'll love me more, you know. And then you go to school. Yeah, if I say this, I'll get laughed at. I better not do that. If I wear that, I'll get laughed at. I better not do that. So bit by bit, you're forging an identity for survival based on, can I still receive love? That's the goal. Can I still receive love is the highest of goals. So I can sustain myself here. We are wired to feel love, belongingness. And so a child will do anything by sacrificing themselves, adopting traits of what they think will lead to more love. That's the forging of an ego, social intelligence. What does mum need? What does dad need? What do my brothers need? Sister, friends, teachers, society. Before you know it, the ego is created based on survival to make sure they keep getting invited to the game, to the table, receive love.
I've got about 200 questions, but I do want to introduce you to the listeners first to give a bit of context to who you are and what you do. So I find it so interesting to try and get people to define themselves, because they often just, I had this question I normally ask people, which is like, tell me who you are without telling us your age, your job, or other of those external labels. So I'll ask you that question because I'm very curious to your response. So tell me who you are without telling me your age or your job or...
Yeah. I am a naive monkey of this earth that is trying to figure out where I've landed, what the nature of this life is about. Super curious about the nature of consciousness. Who am I? What am I? Big existential questions. What is our potential, right? And so I am somebody that is here both trying to explore the nature of this existence, like a calling, and someone that's also in complete fear as well of I think exposure of complete truth as well. I hope that's not too abstract, but what I mean by someone that's in fear, it's like I'm also bound by my ego. So I am someone that is also, by looking into the world out there, trying to understand myself, recognizing the labels in which I've put on myself, that I am scarier than I thought. You know, I have built an identity that is socially adept, competent, but it's not me. Do I have the courage to find out what is really underneath all that stuff? So who am I? Yeah, just a very curious person about the nature of this reality and what am I, and hoping I don't fumble across the pathway to love. But that's me, man, at a core.
Where did that curiosity begin?
If I was to use a psychological lens, looking at my history, so my mother was diagnosed bipolar, postpartum psychosis, schizophrenic, very difficult person to be around as a child, you could say. No fault of her own. She had her own history, but I think me trying to sustain a relationship, staving off anxiety around a mother. So I had a very ambivalent, you could say anxious, ambivalent relationship to my mom. Like it's the object of love, but the object of pain and fear. If only the child asks, if only I can understand the mother, then I can feel calmness. I can be loved. If I can fix her, then I can receive the love that I need. What do I have to do? Right? And that, I feel like, was the seeds of my egoic development, the curiosity. What's happening to this chaos, the chaotic mother? Who is she? What is she? What is that? It's so unpredictable. It's chaos, right? So the curiosity begins out of survival, I think, needing to sustain or stabilize the feminine mother, to really just to aim at love and stability, to find homeostasis. But that means I would have to understand the complexities of this chaos. So you could say I was compelled into action out of survival, to be curious, because it meant stability of mind and peace if I could get it right and find the answer.
That's why I went and studied psychology, was because of my own stuff. Like I wanted to understand it, and it almost give me a sense of peace if I just knew why things are the way they are, why people treated me certain ways, why I reacted certain ways. If only I could understand it, it would make me feel better. So I don't know if that was still just avoiding from an emotional sense, because I reckon for a long period of my time I intellectualized a lot of emotions, especially when you start studying psychology. You have all these tools, you can escape the emotion through logic.
Good point.
And now I'm trying to integrate emotions back, and because I'm like, my mind is like, it's our greatest tool, but it's almost sort of prevented me from being who I'm meant to be, like human. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. So it's like, in that statement, you're saying that there is a human version of you, like that is more true, that is beneath the intellectualization of things. That if you're closer to emotion, you're closer to human, you're closer to truth. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Like it's almost like I'm uncovering this authenticity, trying to recapture some of these things that, like these labels and these masks that I've put on, even subconsciously. Like it's so hard to be aware of these things you've constructed, but once you sort of go down that rabbit hole of like, I haven't been my truest self, and I know that, like, it's just like, how much further does this hole go? And how do I even begin to find answers?
Yep. Good point. The beginning of all awakening phases is a recognition of what you can call karmic loops, or you'll see behavioral patterns. And you recognize that it leads to destruction. It leads to unhealthy relationships. It leads to tension of the body, friction. It's like, this surely isn't it. This doesn't feel like a life that is free. So there's this idea. I wonder if there's a freer way to be in this world, where I can relax more, drop my shoulders more, not be someone for someone else all the time, because I feel like I'm in character all the time. There's what we spoke about at the beginning, the identification with an egoic mask. Okay, then I'm noticing that I'm afraid of this. I'm afraid of showing people this part of me. Why? So it comes with the question of why, That's where it takes a bit of courage to go deeper into your why, because there's a reason why you're naive, because it scares the hell out of you. The truth is, if you went and uncovered your true fears, you'd be probably scared of it, because you'd find a little boy or a little girl there that's like forgotten about, that you've exiled a long time ago and said, you have to be tougher. The world needs you to be more so you can survive here. But that means there's a fragmented timeline. There's a part of you that's been rejected. So it's in the rejection of your authentic self that may have been more playful, had dreams about this world. It was a very authentic expression, a playfulness, a joyfulness. In all of those descriptions, it's freedom, right? So this is where we do the full circle and look back at our little child and say, well, man, maybe they had it more than I do. They figured it out, what it's like to be human, but then we had to survive and get on with it and learn the rules of the game, be serious, be responsible, sensible. I get it, but then you'll see a natural full circle where we'll learn again from our inner child and recognize that there was a courage in the expression. But now that we're bigger and stronger, we don't need someone to take care of us as much as we used to. You can revisit the nature of that little child and recognize that there was a freedom in that. There was a more you in that. And you'll see by default, there was more emotional expression. They cried when they wanted to cry. They laughed when they wanted to laugh. They didn't think about what they looked like as much. You're going right back to the younger years where you can sort of remember what that was like, the freedom of expression. There's something more true about that. And then we use that to sort of template over us now. How did I get here? Why did I have to create these layers of protection and shape myself, reject that part of myself? And you'll find that it was because of a belief that you created back then about not being safe. And then now it's about recognizing, well, that belief came from a time where you had to depend on others. So it's like employing a protector that says you need to act more like this now to survive socially, but that's because it was protecting a 5-year-old little boy. You're not 5 anymore, but you've adapted all of your behavioral things from a little child, the vulnerable parts of you. And so, yeah, it's a relinquishing of those fears.
So your expertise is this integration between the East and the West, because when I was studying psychology, it's very obviously westernized. And I think for a lot of people, including myself, my old school of thinking was like, you have a problem, you go see a psychologist, there's a solution, you leave. Or then you hear of these Eastern practices, meditation, these woohoo spiritual things. Where do we even begin to understand the differences in them and what they actually are? Because I just know that I'm still coming to grasp what actually is the right answer. Is where's the grounds for, where's that middle ground? Is there a middle ground? Who's right? What's wrong? Like, I think as humans, we're so like craving this certainty, and I know that I have that in myself. Or are we just naive monkeys, as you said, trying to find an answer when there isn't one?
Trying to find an answer that's not there. As in, is there more to this existence than can be measured or understood logically, making us spiritual more than physical? Yeah, let's say, if you believe that the world or this universe can be fully understood through that which can be measured empirically, observed by the human, and that's the only realm of existence. It's like saying you know God. And I'm not, you're saying that as the validation of God, but it's like by saying that it means you understand the entire creative process and all that is, and it's only a matter of time before I just measure it through some objective means. But at least the assumption is through my 5 senses and that which can be measured, is the correct way of determining truth. This is where it gets dangerous in terms of like, well, not dangerous, but like naive and humility is the nature of truth. So through the biological, what they call bioreductive materialism philosophy, that everything can be measured, and it's the atheist adoption of philosophy as well, that everything is fundamentally physical, therefore that which can be measured and that which can't doesn't exist, and it's just a nice idea, right? That just means that all that can be discovered as true and should be determined as truth, that it can be measured. Now that it takes out all the phenomena, all the things that are happening to humans that are quite phenomenological. Like there's mysterious things happening to us all the time, and it's not new. It's always been there. It just scares us. All things that are mysterious scare us. It just means that, okay, well, let's put that in the unexplainable box, and that stays on the shelf at the back there in the library where nobody goes. And it just means that, yeah, that which can't be measured is just non-existent or not worthy of pursuit. I think that's really a result of anxiousness, like a need to control the world, a need to be able to measure everything so I can stabilize my mind. The mysterious world or things that can't be measured out of my mind or logic is scary by default. And I think that's what stopped our pursuit into understanding spirituality more, because we don't like the ideas of, it tends to be a Western culture, we don't like the idea of something we can't see. It lurks in the shadows. It's in the dark. Therefore, it can creep up on us. So we don't like things that can't be measured. I think that's the nature of why.
Yeah. So, 2 truths, 1 lie. So, 2 statements or 3 statements, and I'll have to do my best to differentiate from truth, which this can get quite philosophical, but I'm interested what you've got.
Okay, 3 statements. 2 truths, one lie. Okay, good luck, Egan. Okay, first statement. I have 6 brothers. Second statement. The first time I was ever on an oil rig, it almost tipped over. Number 3. I've healed a bulging disc in my back with my mind.
I reckon you don't have 6 brothers.
You reckon?
That's my guess.
Yeah, you got it, mate.
Where did you, like, we talked about where your interest sort of sparked from, but where did you take that? Because you have a lot of FIFO experience and you have a lot of time spent in there. So can you take us through that? And I guess how you went and segued into studying these things and going down this path?
Yeah, this is where it taps a little bit into the spiritual side as well, because, I was leading a good life, a really good life. I was making a lot of money. So I ticked all the boxes. I was on an even roster, working offshore, construction, and if I wasn't construction, it was, what they call like maintenance work or project work offshore. And it was probably the most amount of money you could make as a boilermaker, or second to one more sort of job. And so I'd pretty much made it, you could say, as a boilermaker, a welder, a coated welder. And so it wasn't until this one moment I asked myself a question when I was out there. I still remember the moment. And I was sitting there sort of on one of the sides of the ship and looking out to the side, and I was thinking, okay, Boris, if you could do this for the rest of your life, because you've made it, you've got the best money, you only work half the year, you could be home half the year, holidays, and would you be content? And my answer scared me, because it was like, no. Like, then what? Like, if this doesn't do it, then what? And you realize, okay, well, to lead a good life, it had nothing to do with the money, because I had all the money really we needed, plus some. And then you've got this capacity to only work half the year, and I didn't hate the job either. Like, I was good at it as well. Like, nothing on paper really suggests I should have left. That's what makes this thing pretty messed up. You don't get any social validation. Like, yeah, this is what they call the leap of faith, right? Because I had to ask myself a question then, like, then what? What is it then? And then my thought process went down this, well, where do I find or derive the most meaning in this world? Where am I experiencing flow, freedom, excitement? And it's always with people, like conversations with people. You'll find me at parties, like years ago before I started studying, like you'd always find Boris in the corner in a D&M with someone just talking about life. It was just fascinating. And if I was to be honest, I had a capacity to just help people feel safe and to talk about real things, because I was curious and I wanted that feeling and experience, and I had the courage to go and create that from a very young age. And I had an old soul, which is what they described me as well. But I was like, okay, well, it led me to the thought of, can you sit with people and actually do that for a living? And that scared me, because it's like, I'm not an academic, I'm a boilermaker. I couldn't write an essay for the life of me when I was younger. In high school, couldn't understand the idea of English and essay writing and all that. Psychology is all essay writing and reports. And so I was like, well, if I don't do this, or if I don't pursue that, something in me is like, you just have to go and do it. And if you don't, you're going to lead a life of meaninglessness. And I had a sense of knowing that was true. It's like, damn it, that there's always a catastrophe. So that's the call to adventure in the hero's journey. You could Google the hero's journey and you'll find there's a part where you get the calling, the call to adventure. And that's where your most meaningful life will be. And it takes risk, great risk. So much risk that it'll scare the hell out of you and make you reject the calling first. But then, like, good luck rejecting it long enough, because you will know that it will creep up at nighttime and let you know that you're not leading a good life. It's socially validating and it ticks all the boxes, but it's only meaningful when it's validated by something external. But you actually seek, if you're honest, you seek something of an internal validation, an excitement for life, and knowing that you're doing something for yourself. And yeah, if you think about your death, it's like, well, one day I'm going to die. Would I be content with the things that I've done, the level of courage that I've taken towards any path? And so every man, every woman will get this calling, this feeling, and if you don't honor it to some capacity, you're now flirting with the idea of meaninglessness. And so, and then you'll have to lead a life of distraction, of making sure that voice doesn't come back and remind you that you're not living to your potential. You're not living courageously. So I faced that voice until I was like, no, I have to try. So I went and just started full time. I asked my wife at the time, and she was like, yeah, I'll support you 100%. Are you sure? And I was like, yeah, I'm sure. And so, I mean, I'm talking about a pay cut, massive pay cut. And then so I was rostered on 3 and 3 at the time, and then went studying full time. My lecturers were very flexible. And yeah, that was where the transition happened. And it was nowhere near what I thought it was going to be in terms of like difficulty, because I had passion and I was enjoying what I was doing. Like I was meant to be there, and I felt it. And so I was flying through things. I mean, it wasn't all easy, but there was a flow there. Yeah, because I was engaged in what I was doing, and I wanted conversations about it too. So I forged a little group of guys. We met up like once a month to talk about philosophy, but with authenticity and like not making it too intellectual, but like dropping in and making it real and personal for ourselves. But I was hungry to learn more about the mind, and so the university was giving me that window to go in deep and see where our industry is at. So I had a lot of passion in there. And once I was in there, I knew there was no turning back. Like, this is my new identity. It's going to be something of this nature. While I was staving off the egoic fears of imposter syndrome, I'm just a boilermaker. So I found myself excessively intellectualizing things as well, trying to sound smart, like I belong, while really I'm just fighting a part of myself that says you don't belong, but I'm projecting it out there. So I had a bit of battle with that until I started getting good grades, and I was like, oh, maybe I do belong here. I can settle down. Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people have those voices, right? But I feel like we're quite good at numbing those voices, is it, from what you know now, what is it? Is it intuition? I want to know, like, this messenger that we have in our voice saying that we should do a certain thing. We try and deny that voice. What is it?
Yeah. Depends which group you talk to, but you could call it a higher self. You can call it God. If you're in religious circles, you can call it, the call to meaning. It's just a voice. We don't really know how to conceptualize, and it doesn't matter, which is, again, the identification of it probably is less significant than the value of its existence. Why is it valuable? Is because that's the thing that avoids deathbed regrets. Like, because if you honor it, this intuitive inner voice don't get me wrong, you got a ton of voices in there saying, hey, run away from that thing because it's scary, or break up with that person because you're safer over there, and those are voices of fear. But there is this weird voice that you can identify that feels more true than the others. Say if you're flirting with an idea of doing something meaningful for yourself, you're going to hear it. You're going to know it's there. It's this exciting sort of feeling, oh, that would be good. And you find yourself staring at the wall or out the window, contemplating, and it lights you up. But then you'll quickly insert all these filters of doubt, confusion, distraction. And those are the voices of social survival, to make sure you play it safe, and so that's the battle of the mind. While we have voices, we have parts of us that are all in battle trying to figure out, but its existence itself is the call, and that's the spirit, the call to adventure. And I'll make this quick point here. You're always going to be in battle between a primal, egoic, survival-based mind, which is, I need everything predictable. It's all things 3D, dense, so imagine the inner monkey or the inner caveman. It just wants survival, predictability, safety, right? And so do all things that are safe, predictable, and therefore it is sustainable across time. So it's a very survival-based mindset. But we know, and we can all be honest, we know that a survival-based mindset is not the mind that leads you to a good life, right? You can see people that live it and play it safe. And it's like, man, that ain't living. you know. But then there's this other voice, let's say the spirit. It's irrational. It's the voice that says, do something courageous, do something big, do something different. Oh, but it's unpredictable. We don't know what's going to happen. Say, what about the pursuit of love? Go into that relationship. You know you want to ask that girl out. It's like, yeah, but I might be rejected. It's like, yeah. There's an adventure there. There's unpredictability. Yes, why should I do it? Because when it succeeds, the feeling you're going to get is in the realm of love. That's the unexplainable part of human. Why do we feel that compulsion towards love? Our bodies are wired to feel all that chemistry of bonding, fusing with another human. So whether it's a good relationship with friends, going down a line of work, a partnership, love relationship, it's in the realm of fusion, and unpredictability is just a default characteristics of the pursuit of love. And so the spirit compels you into the unknown. It calls you to adventure. It says, leave your safety behind, all your predictability, and do something big. And that's where the idea of faith comes into it. Have faith that if you take that leap, you're not going to have any guarantees, but if you do it and you have faith, that he goes, that's where the reward is. That's the thing that staves off meaninglessness.
How do you have faith when you have no proof? Because if I look at your leap of faith, someone might say he's proved himself with his old job, he's capable, but for a lot of people, they don't have even any external success anyway. They feel they have low self-esteem. Where are they getting this faith from? I agree with the fact, with what you're saying, but I think practically for people, how do we bridge that gap between having a voice and being able to overcome the comfort of just doing what you've always done and following the traditional path?
I would ask any individual, do you think you can live a meaningful life, a high quality life, by doing everything that's predictable? What do you reckon?
They were saying...
What if I ask you directly?
Okay.
Do you believe you can have a good life, a meaningful life, a high quality life by doing all things that are predictable? Means knowing the outcome of all your actions.
No, because...
Why not?
I think for me, I think I'm just I believe really strongly that so much has not played out the amount of promises I've given myself before, if I do this, this will happen. If I do that, these things will happen. Now now I've had that awareness where life is so unpredictable, and I have certainty of the uncertainty that I stopped making those promises of if this happens, then this will happen, which how can I flip this anxiety I have for predictability into excitement and courage to create a life that is inspiring and something I look forward to waking up to? And that's the path I'm on, is how can I turn this anxiety I have of wanting to have my goals and dreams met into the wilderness? And there's so much uncertainty, but with uncertainty comes possibility. But I don't know how to bridge that gap because I'm so conditioned to want to know the steps and how it's going to play out, because it gives me a sense of control that things will turn out the way I want them to. How do I let go?
Well, I'll touch on the letting go part to deal with the anxiety part, but I'll finish your question on the faith thing, that if you believe that, well, no, I don't really know myself well enough to do all things that are predictable, and the world keeps spontaneously punching me in the face and saying, you got that wrong. Look at what happened. I was like, oh yeah, true. So, why take a risk on something like this? Say this podcast, Well, you have an idea. The idea is, well, I wonder what it's like to connect to people, to give them something of an authentic expression, what it's like to see inside a human mind a bit more, and then maybe that something might change or trigger some meaningful change in that person's life. I would love to experience that. But then the voice of the monkey, the voice of the Neanderthal, You know, the caveman in you is like, yeah, dude, but you run the risk of being shamed, getting it wrong, being laughed at, failing, and all the stories that come with that, you know, the failing part. Why should you do it? That moment there is the deciding part, where you will draw upon, you'll describe it however you want, but it's an essence of faith. It's like, well, yeah, you're right. I might get laughed at. Hey, I want to ask that girl out. I really feel this attraction for her. I'm going to, yeah, dude, but you might get rejected. Then what? You might even be laughed at. Oh, I don't want to feel that. No, you don't, man. Dude, just play it safe, man. Don't go there. Well, but what if she likes me? It's like, yeah, what if? That moment there is the cusp of your divinity, to choose to stick to a primal, predictable existence, playing it safe, or pursuing the possibility, which is guaranteed unknown. You're not going to know the outcome, but you're going to take the leap of faith.
What makes taking the leap of faith more likely is how important is like self-talk, for example. I know for me that's really important. And the story I tell myself about how things are unfolding, like the podcast, for example, I could tell myself so many stories about why some things haven't met my expectations or other aspects of my life. How important is that story I tell myself? Like, what's the truth? Where's the reality? How do I, because you're craving that predictability of what things mean, to almost deduce like meaning from it. I want to like categorize it. I want to put a value on it. How do I know the story that I tell myself? How do I make the right one? How do I say the right things to myself to keep going? Like, and how important is that? Like the words that we use and say, because I know for me, like you hear a lot from like Joe Dispenza, for example, like how our thoughts can change our reality. I'm just intrigued to connect the dots between the self-story and self-talk to help us take those leaps of faith.
Yeah. So what you tell yourself is I'm glad you use the word story. Everything in this cognitive mind, that how you perceive this entire reality, is through stories. Everything is a story of I'm either safe, I'm not safe, I'm lovable, I'm not lovable. That's real, that's not real. It's all a story. That person's going to leave me if I do that. Everything runs through this meaning-making machine of the mind. The filter of stimulation comes inside. I make sense of it, I interpret it, and then I tell myself a story about it. And those that are good at telling stories will captivate others more effectively. Everyone's just sharing stories. So then it gives you the freedom to play with stories, right? Now you've understood the word of story. Well, what do we understand about the elements of a story? There is a hero in every story. There's this protagonist, the lead star, the main character, and there is an author that writes the script. There's a nemesis or conflict within it as well. But you are the author. You are the lead star. You're all elements. That's the nature of this metaphysical world, is that you are all of them. And you're slowly waking up to that. So if you're the author and you are putting yourself in this position of understanding that you are the lead star as well, the experiencer of the entire story, then you can start to play with the story. So let's say you go towards an experience and all your alarm bells are going off. Oh my God, I'm not safe. I'm going to be rejected, right? I'm doing this podcasting. It's like, oh, I'm going to be laughed at. And people aren't going to like me, whatever it is. In that moment, there's a story, right? I'm not acceptable. I might not be acceptable. And you say, well, how do I transmute that or change that story? Recognize where the lie is. That's where you start. All right. So it's like, if your stories lead to dysfunction, bad relationships, avoidance of good things, not allowing yourself to feel the goodness and richness of this life, and you're stuck in anxiety, I'm in fear, recognize where the lie is, because the story is a lie. It may have been true to the 5-year-old or the 10-year-old, whoever developed that story, that I'm not lovable, I'm not worthy, I'm not cool, People don't like me. Whatever it is, if I speak my truth, I will be shut down. These were stories, beliefs, stories, same thing. They were developed at an age where it really was consequential to your existence, right?
Why would we create? I feel it's so paradoxical. Why would we create stories that hurt us? We're meant to be protecting ourselves, right?
You are with those stories because the risk of the action is perceived as more dangerous than the story. That's the trick. You're right about the paradox. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and that's the trick. But the way the ego works is, if I perceive a potential threat, because it's starting to look like, say, I'm going back into a relationship, I'm a fully grown adult, and then I start freaking out because we're starting to get closer and closer, and my heart's going to be exposed here. There's less games. She's going to see me more, and she's going to find out that I'm useless. She's going to find that I'm not cool. I'm actually playing a game of Denzel here. I'm all tough and strong, and she's going to eventually find out that I'm actually weak. This is a story of the mind, right? And self-destructive, right? Why would we do that in that moment? Is because it's your protector. Remember, your ego, this little protector you've employed at a younger age, because that's what you've experienced, is a vulnerability in not being cool or being weak, feeling so victimed to that. Those feelings that were there, you don't ever want to feel them again, which is why your protector looks for any environment and scenario where it potentially could have those same feelings again, being rejected, being laughed at, people finding out that you're weak, right? And so it will defend, it will raise the alarm bells inside if it starts to line up. The conditions are starting to get closer that looked very similar to that 10-year-old boy that got rejected, when he asked out that girl or something, right? The conditions are starting to feel the same here. Or he was broken up with and it broke his heart, right? And then he developed a story that I'm not, or she said I was weak when she was breaking up with me. You're weak. I'm out. Pick your best friend instead or whatever, right? It's like that stayed with that man. And now she's eventually going to find, is 20 years later, that she's eventually going to find out that I'm weak. That will be self-destructive, but it's there because it's reminding you these conditions look very similar to back then, right? And so it's raising the alarm bells because it's trying to protect you. It doesn't want you to feel the same vulnerability and pain that you experienced back then. So it's there because it loves you, right? So we can't develop a relationship with our ego that's punishing and annoying and damn you blocked me from it. It's so punishing, these thoughts, because it thinks that it's protecting you. It's doing its job because you employed it. It's like you saying, well, I never want to feel those feelings ever again. What should I do? Protect her. And your protector's like, okay, stay away from love. Stay away from girls. That's just dangerous. Okay.
When I have these feelings when they come up, like the tendency in the past is to resist it, is to repress it. Now there's a saying like what you resist will persist. How true is that from overcoming these limiting beliefs and these experiences and these stories that we tell ourselves? Is there only one way out? Do we actually have to face it head on? Because I'm trying to wrap my head around the most efficient way to help people understand the overcoming of these stories, because a lot of people know that they have negative stories that they tell themselves, but I think there's a disconnect between like having doubts, having fears, having negative self stories, and knowing like how to overcome it.
Do you want to put it in context of your personal experience?
Yeah,
what you mean?
Like for me, like the most prime example would be like in relationships. Like I've had these like voices like from my earliest relationships with women, like this fear of abandonment, right? Like, and using that word, it's so emasculating, like abandonment, like, oh, I'm scared a woman's going to leave me, like how weak, right?
Yep.
But for some reason, it just feels like something I didn't have control of. Like it was just put onto me. Like, and then for me, it was almost like I carried shame from that. Like like I'm so emotionally dependent. Like I don't want to be, but I just feel this like innate need for validation. I don't know where it comes from. I don't know what it stems from. And because we're not sometimes aware of where these things come from, like shame starts to develop. Like there's something wrong with me. Like why am I in such need of approval from a woman? Or why can't I overcome it? Like I feel like I'm good enough, but clearly I don't believe it for some reason.
Yeah. You start with this then. So you had a question. The question is, why do I need so much approval or validation, right? Who are you asking in that moment? You say, well, me, I'm asking me. But what part of you? And this is where you get closer to the entity or the mind or the age of that fear, you know. You're asking the part of you that's got the alarm bells going off, saying, we need approval, we need validation here, or else something. So if you can identify, sometimes you can start with an age, you know, like who are you talking to? Who are you asking that question to? Why do we need validation? Does your mind go to any particular age?
No, it doesn't. It's a blur to me. And
so it's called that's the unconscious realm. It's the wilderness of the mind. It's that which has been repressed, because you have the answer. We all do. We know exactly where it comes from, but we had to deny it because it's too overwhelming. So we can just get on with the game, right? And that's where your ego has done what it's meant to do, which is just help you survive socially by repressing things that are too anxiety provoking. But there is a voice inside you that says we need social validation. But then there's this other part of you that's actually here and now as an adult, looking at the conditions that are right here and now. It's like, well, that's not really rational because I'm not in danger. Why do I need validation here? Like, I'm fully functional. I'm capable. I don't see why I would need validation. So we know in that moment, logically, it's irrational and it has nothing to do with here and now. So it comes from another time, another place. That's where the need is, the yearning, the hole, the void, the unresolved part of you. It's at a younger age somewhere.
that's what it feels like. Like I'm in a moment sometimes, and there's that inner craving of validation, but on the surface, my logical brain says there's nothing wrong. You do feel safe. Like objectively, things are okay, and there's evidence for that.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I don't know, it doesn't feel right, or there's this push internally, like I need something, and it's almost like there's never going to be enough. And that's where I'm understanding that it comes from a deeper root. Like I'm fortunate to have done like psychology research. I mean, a lot of people don't realize that, and they put so much shame on themselves, like to believe there's something fundamentally wrong. But I'm aware that it stems from somewhere. So how can we tie this into hypnosis? Because hypnosis is a tool that we can help uncover this.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's introduce like hypnosis and what you do, and then integrate that with this example.
Yeah. So the part of you that's say needing the validation, it's looking for love. But then there's this other part of you saying, well, it's irrational. All your needs and wants are irrational. So firstly, I'd just ask, if you didn't get the validation, right? So let's honor that voice, because it's the voice coming through you. Right? And then the hypnotic start is just a tool in which you can just go deeper into this. But say that voice is talking to you. Hey man, we need validation here. You know, we need to make sure we get their approval. Firstly, honor that voice as another entity inside you, because it's trying to talk to you. Often we don't get to the crux of it. It's because we're rejecting it. It's so socially inappropriate and irrational that we then we repress it, because it's like, I sound weak. I say, what? All right, so we push it away. Therefore, we can't understand it. So the first thing is to approach it with love. So as I talk about this approach of how we would go near it, just think of hypnosis as a way that you can rest the ego more, right? And so when the ego is rested, you're less defensive. All right. So in a hypnotic state, the ego isn't there to, oh, am I sounding weak? Do I sound crazy? I don't want to be vulnerable here. I don't want to cry. The ego is playing all those filters out. And so the hypnotic state will allow more freedom of flow into those states. So let's play a little game here where it's like, okay, first, number one, you've highlighted an irrationality. It's an emotional desire, a compulsion. I need validation. It's not logical. Therefore, it has nothing to do with the here and now. It comes from another time, another place. Who in my body, where in my body is the spokesperson that would like to speak on behalf of this irrationality, right? And that's what it's like, calling upon it. And then imagine you're in a courtroom, and you've got this little dude steps up to the stand. He's the voice, right? He's the one that's saying we need love. We need the validation from the feminine love object, And the judge, say in the past, is too busy sending him off, saying you're too weak, you're too irrational, get out of here. So the judge, before even hearing him out, this is what humans do, we just send him off to prison. But now it's like, no, you've developed a bit of higher consciousness, a bit of love, a bit of patience. Now you're developing the wise king inside you. Now you bring him to the stand, but now you're going to approach it with love, curiosity. Hey, no, I'm not going to reject you. I'm not going to push you away. I'm not going to judge you. I'm actually here just to understand you. And he's looking at you like, man, you've pushed me away for a long time, man. Like, you've locked me up. Every time I tried to tell you that I'm scared or I want to tell you, you've pushed me away. It's like, yeah, I'm not going to do that this time. I want you to, I'm just asking you now, if you don't get the validation, the approval from the feminine, what does that mean to you? How does it feel? What would his answer be to you if you don't get it? What feelings would be generated from if you don't get the validation? It doesn't matter if it's irrational. Let that voice speak. So he sounds like he's a younger version. So it doesn't matter if you get it accurate, but he sounds younger. So we're going to acknowledge that. What would he say because it obviously means so much to you to get that validation. So what's the consequence if you don't? Where does that leave you?
I always find my logical brain, I find it like, we talk about the ego, like I must have a big mask around some of these topics sometimes, because I find it hard to go within. But then again, I'm so logical with understanding, being able to connect the dots between experiences and how I feel, yet I feel like there's like an egoic layer that's sort of preventing me from being able to access sometimes. But what would be your perspective? Obviously, we did the hypnosis session, because you're the expert here with these things. I get a bit stuck.
Yeah, because I can see like you've intellectualized a question around emotion, right? Of how I'm just asking, like, well, look, I where does that leave you? Your feeling, and just allowing the first thing to just pop up. If I didn't get approval, if I got rejected by the feminine, abandoned by the feminine, what's the first feeling that would come up? And then it led you to a intellectualization of it, of how the ego works. It's showing you that, it's just telling you and telling me that, oh yeah, there's the ego in action as I speak about it. It's a defense mechanism to avoid the emotional content. Why? Is because, one, we're in a social setting, and maybe the assumptions as well of who may see this as well all comes into it. So the ego is doing his job by saying, stay tough. Stay tough, man. We don't do that stuff. Remember that? No, we don't do that. Just vulnerability, it's weak, or whatever the story is. It's just a story. So you can practice that now. It's like, there's the irrationality. You're actually allowed. So logic says you're actually allowed to drop into something more true, because you're not that vulnerable little boy anymore that's reliant on others to be alive. And so therefore you're more safe than you think you are. That's how you sort of talk to the egos, all that protector that's saying, don't go in your emotions, because it's putting all this filter of what you should look like based on some calculated events of the past, but it has nothing to do with the essence of now. That's why mindfulness, spirituality is a practice of bringing your mind to the now, because right now you're actually safe. And if you're safe now, that means you're allowed to look. And the ego protector is allowed to step to the side and reveal the thing and play the game freely. That's the unpredictability that we were speaking about before. Have faith that as you explore the inner self, you will be safe. You might feel and uncover things that you don't like to feel because it's not in the realms of joy and happiness and laughter, but it's true that you'll find truth, and that's better than a fluffy falsehood. And so in your pursuit of going in, only if you're comfortable, but it's like, what's the first feeling that will come to you if I say that, abandonment just drops in? You didn't get the validation from the feminine. You got rejected, abandoned, left by a girlfriend. What's the fear in that? What's the first feeling that would be generated in you?
I feel it in my heart, in my chest, just pain.
Good. Yep. So here is the assumption. Okay, cool. My body is storing it here, right? And so even as you identify it, this is where usually the protector's like, oh, dude, what are you doing, man? We repress that stuff. We push that away. All right. And so you're just saying to it, and it's okay. We're going to go closer to it because we're actually safe. And so you're almost acting like the wise king now. That's saying to the protector, the advisor, that you're not safe and we can't go near vulnerable things, that we've repressed it into the body for a reason, for safety and survival. It's like, no, now you're safe. Your body's letting you know where you stored it, where you felt it the most. All right. And so as you go closer to it, now see if you can give it a feeling, an idea, so a name of an emotion. So it's felt here. And what's the most accurate word that would come to you to describe that feeling?
Like tight, like compressed, like my chest. I feel a bit harder to breathe.
Okay. Yep, hard to breathe, tightness of the chest. And what emotion would be associated to those kinds of feelings?
It's definitely anxiety.
Anxiety, yep.
For sure, that's always been the most related feeling when it comes to the fear of abandonment.
Yep. Okay. So now put that in context. Why would a human feel anxious about anything?
Because they're scared of the what if.
Yep. Scared of what if. Yep. Scared. Absolutely. So it's like, okay, if I don't get validated or approved of by the feminine, they might leave me. There's the catastrophe of the mind, right? That's the thing we're trying to avoid, but not just because of the action, but because of the generated feeling. So that's one layer deeper. People say, well, it's because I was abandoned. No. It's because of the feeling that was generated from the abandonment. It was felt here. What was it like? Tightness of the chest. If I just drop in and allow myself to feel it, tightness of the chest. Cool. All right. Is there a name? Yeah, we call it anxiety. What's anxiety about? Fear. What if? What if this happens? Okay, so there's an anxiousness stored right here that if I'm left or if I'm left or abandoned, what does that mean for me? What's the catastrophe that follows? What's the fear of the mind? What's the assumption? What's the what if? Like if they leave or if she leaves, where does that leave you?
I think it's just that I'm not good enough, not worthy. Everything was meaningless now. It's sort of an extension of that event. Being abandoned is an extension of myself. Like that means something about me.
Yeah. It says that I'm not worthy. Is that what you're saying? Yep. Not worthy of what?
Like love or belonging and
yeah. Not worthy of love or belonging. Remember the start of this conversation? What's the thing that humans are really here for?
Belonging.
That's it. Belonging, love. You take that away from a human, who are they? What are they? How effective are they in this world? There's just darkness. And so there you've got the core wounding, the core fear. I don't ever want to feel like I don't belong and love doesn't exist in my life. Because that's what I felt. This is what this guy who's still standing on the stand, he's telling the judge who's just curious about what's going on. He's eventually stumbled across this and told you, look, man, this happened. There was an experience where I was abandoned pretty much, or else he wouldn't exist. I was abandoned, and it led to feelings around here, tightness and anxiety. The judge is, oh, what's that anxiety about? Well, what if she leaves? Okay, what if she leaves? Well, then I'm left alone and I feel like I'm not worthy. Worthy of what? Like I'm not worthy of love, or I belong. Oh, what did that feel like? Imagine just asking that young boy there, what did that feel like? Being left, being abandoned, or being having no belongingness, no love. What's that like? What's the first words that come to you? Lonely, isolation. Yep. Nobody wants to feel that unless you've completely regressed from society.
From our hypnosis session, then, how do you make sense of it for me?
The session?
Yeah, from the session, how do you interconnect it with what we're talking about?
It says that this connection here, for us to go closer to it and give it context and flesh, the hypnosis session allowed us to play with your ego more and more. So I could go beyond your defense mechanisms, and provide that safety feeling to go close to the essence of this thing, which I don't know, maybe before our session, my theory or my guess would be it would have been difficult. It would be more difficult to have this conversation prior to that session, but we've already established a link and a permission to go into the heart space, right? And so when we use the hypnosis, it's just an invitation for your shoulders to drop, your body to drop. It's like just saying to your protector, hey man, you're safe. It's all good. We're going to take care of that little vulnerable boy that you're still protecting down there. As that happens, we can start to feel the body more. And the more you trust me in the process, your defenses start to let go. It's like opening your hand slowly to the grasp that you've been holding on to. This grasp is, I need to look like this. I need to sound like this. This is the ego development, the straitjacket that society has placed upon you. And so my invitation is to take the straitjacket off of the mind, the egoic protector, and the grasp onto the identity of needing to hold yourself together for dear life. The hypnosis allowed me to go closer and closer, to keep inviting you. It's okay. It's like, okay, it's okay. Bit by bit, and you're not in danger, but you'll check, your reality check, as you drop in and then notice it. And he's like, I'll give you permission. But then you give yourself permission, then it uncovers a deeper story of abandonment, a deeper story of, well, this is what happened to me. Cool. Okay. What kind of story did you develop at that age? Well, I'm not lovable. I'm not worthy. Okay. How do we defend against that? How do we develop an ego, which is for social survival? Make sure that we are approved of. Make sure that we get validation. Make sure we never feel that thing again. So we'll do all the things. We'll make sure we do all the things to get approved of, so we never experience that ever again. Abandonment. I'll never get left again, the naive little boy says. I'll make sure I tick all the boxes, and a lot of his efforts and energy go towards the cultivation of being perfect, of whatever he devises as the best character forward that will achieve love, validation, acceptance, belongingness, all staving off the memory of what it's like to be left. And so it compels him into cultivating an identity accordingly, because it was burned into him so deeply with a lot of emotions. That's where what we call the subconscious mind. The subconscious recordings is that which has been burnt into somebody with a tremendous amount of focus and heart space, a lot of emotion behind it. That's the Joe Dispenza thing you mentioned. The cultivation of creating a reality is just the mind, one idea, repetition of an idea, focus on that idea and a feeling into it. The more feeling into it, the more focus, the more it becomes burnt into the subconscious mind. Look at childhood abandonment. Hyper-focused, I'm alone, I'm abandoned, a lot of emotion there. You're literally writing as you forge your story. I'm not lovable, I'm not this, all that, whatever it was, I must never feel this again. You're burning it into your subconscious mind, which then creates the karmic loops, the patterns of behavior that we see.
Can we overcome these childhood wounds?
Of course we can. Yep. You're not hardwired in any way in that way. Your mind is malleable. You'll have a tendency and you'll have strong grasps on it. And it might not be one session, boom, now you're free. Yeah, I'm not feeling it ever again. No, what it's like is a recognition of it. Stage 1, I see the pattern, awareness, and then responsibility. It's my responsibility. It is not going to blame. You're going to blame, you've missed it. If you start going blaming mum, dad, all the people, you've missed it. It externalizes the power of control, and it just justifies and perpetuates this existence, the stagnant loop. No, full accountability. This is why I did that, which is why I was saying you asked the questions about that part of you, about what he felt, because he's the one that created the story. It actually didn't matter what happened. It's what did he think about himself during that moment. Once you recognize that, take responsibility of it, then you go to the surrender of the emotional content of it. Okay, yeah, now I am actually scared. So you know what I mean? It's like, because you've repressed it. I'm not allowed to feel that vulnerability ever again. So it's a repressed energy of the body. So what I'm saying is surrender. First, revelation of it, awareness of it, take responsibility of it. It is all me. No one else's responsibility. It's me. I cultivated the story, no one else. Then the surrender to the energy, the emotion, energy in motion, that content of the body. Surrender to it. So I'm saying let the ego rest. Feel, well, there it is. Energy's been stuck here in my heart for a long time in this center. Or, yep, let that go. Breathe through it. Feel through it. Let the random content come out. Give that passage to the body. Surrender. Whatever comes up, acceptance is the next phase. Acceptance of whatever it is. Oh, there's actually a boy that's really angry at mum, wants to swear at mum. I was like, yep, accept that. Don't repress that. Don't feel guilty for it. It doesn't need your judgment. Don't send that little kid to prison for being the way he was or getting it wrong. No. Or looking like he's weak now because he's crying about mum. It's like, no. Full acceptance of anything that comes up. Full acceptance. Acceptance. That's free because you're getting closer to freedom.
What does acceptance actually look like? Like, what thought, how do we ensure that we're actually accepting the feelings that come up and not just repressing it in some way? Yeah. It's like if you were to drop into an emotional state right now, as I ask about your little boy, and say you became emotional, you dropped into a bit of sadness, grief, and I was like, oh, dude, don't do that. Oh, we're doing a podcast, man. Like, don't be, what are you doing that for? Would you say that's the opposite of acceptance or acceptance? Yeah, it's the opposite. Opposite, right? It's a rejection of it. And so the acceptance, what would that look like if I was to be acting out acceptance towards your emotional expression? Like validating it or sitting with it and not judging it? Yep. Literally sitting with it, not judging with it. Allowing it to just be. Not trying to stave it off, not creating stories around it, not try and make it go away. It's like curiosity. Yeah, I wonder what that's about. It's here. If it's here, it must be important, is the assumption. I accept my fate. So it all happens in here. If I let my body go, I surrender to my body. I might do breath work, I might do some hypnosis, I might do some psychedelics, doesn't matter, I might do some therapy. Whatever presents itself, you have to accept it as if you're this wise, loving father or mother, a wise, loving caretaker that says all that comes up is acceptable, because we have shame, we have fantasies, desires, things that are socially unacceptable, repressed ideas, guilt around things that we have just repressed, pushed into the bottom parts, which means we reject it. We do not accept it, which means we never get to let it go. You never get to understand the nature of it. Therefore, it remains a stuck karmic loop, an energy that you still operate from, and then scratch your head wondering why I have failed relationships or why I can't relax around people or these things. It's because you haven't released it. You haven't even gone near the acceptance of it. How do I fully just accept that? No, I'm actually scared of this thing there. I'm actually scared of that. Oh, I'm actually not as tough as I thought I was, or whatever it is. Oh, there's sadness. Oh, there's grief there. Oh, I actually feel like punching dad in the face. Where did that come from? Right? These random thoughts come out. It's like, yep, full acceptance. How do we know we're actually overcoming these things? Because it's very hard to track. And as a logical person, it's how do I know I'm making progress towards overcoming these fears I might have in my life? Like, it's a very feeling-based thing, but it's hard to put a number on it. So your reactivity. So it's measured by your reactivity. So you'll know when you won't forget. It's not like you'll forget your history,
right? You remember everything. Some people come and Boris, can you hypnotize me to forget my ex? It's not it. You're way off. And so it's not about forgetting. You'll always remember. But how you'll know that you are less reactive? Well, firstly, you'll accept your ex. You accept that it's a part of your life and it's shaped you in some capacity. So acceptance of the person and the experience. But that person is obviously very reactive, right? And so that means the word of the ex, the name of the ex, what happened, frustration comes up, and they start making generalizations about women. Women are just no good. Girlfriends are just shit. I mean, you should be single. Look at, you're young, man, just be single. It's, where are you talking from to say that you should be anything? It comes from hurt. It comes from, right? And so I'm impulsively responding to my history with no real consciousness, no awareness. And so how you'll know that you are, say, resolving it, releasing it, letting it go, you'll remember it, but you are less impulsively responsive to it. The wounding, you'll be in relationships, and it's like, oh, there's that fear of wanting to run away, or there's that excessive need to please her or show her that I'm good enough. There, I'm noticing it come up. You've got it. You're aware of it now. You have choice because you're aware of it, right? That means for the unaware person, the unresolved, still egoically driven, would still be impulsively pleasing, right? And then losing eventually a relationship or developing a poor quality relationship, a friction, scratching the head thinking, why isn't it working? But the person that is getting closer to consciousness, higher consciousness, resolving old karmic loops, behavioral patterns, stuck pain of the past, they see it, they notice that part of them that wants to do the show, try to get the approval, do all those things. But they notice the compulsion of wanting to do it. They smile. And then they just choose not to do that. What would be better? What's based on here and now? Oh, it's actually probably better for me right now to be silent. Or maybe I don't need to show off that thing there. Maybe they're allowed to tell me that they're not happy about something and I don't have to take it so seriously. Because for the person that still seeks approval, there'll be a sensitivity to conflict, a sensitivity to criticism. Because in the irrational young boy's mind, that feels too close to abandonment. What are you saying? You don't love me? Well, I didn't say that. She might look at you, that all funny. This is where you become impulsive. Well, yeah, I didn't say that. I'm just saying I wasn't happy when you didn't answer my text after 24 hours, But I'm just sharing that I don't like that. But someone that's hypersensitive to approval, they might overlook into that reactive and then blow it up to bigger than what it needs to be because they're still responding to staving off the catastrophe of being abandoned, right?
Yeah, I feel like that's, when I look at my growth in that area of fear of abandonment, I feel like it's that reactivity, defensiveness to when things pop up, when there is conflict, like the way I respond and react and deal with it internally has changed so much. But I still feel like there's room for growth. Like I still have that awareness of like those moments where I can feel it, or there's that yearning for that bit of validation. It's nowhere near where it used to be, but it's sort of just interesting to how I'm going to continue growing. And that's not just that area. Like that's just like an example, but there's so many fears that we hold. But the journey of actually overcoming it and the timeline of that, because I think a lot of us are trying to rid ourselves of these problems. But where is the presence in the overcoming and like the patience with it? Because a lot of us are just so fear-based. We want to like rid ourselves of these insecurities and these fears, but it's not really realistic. But it's
it's when people talk about they go on psychedelic journeys, or I just want to go into an ego death, right? You hear a lot about this ego death stuff, right? It's so naive to say that. And as people say, Boris, I just want to get rid of my anxiety. I want to get rid. It's like saying I want to get rid of these memories as well. I just want to get rid of that. And it's like, of course I get it, because you're suffering and you don't want to experience those negative emotions. It's very debilitating, right, in all parts of your life. So it's like, I get you don't want to experience that. a better language around that is that you need to cultivate a relationship to it. Because if you can understand it, the timeline in which it came from, you'll have more control over it. You'll be less impulsive to it. And then you can take the wisdom out of it. And then what was a curse becomes a gift. That's about you. If you think you can lead to a good, free life and, floating through this world while rejecting and denying and just deleting things from your existence, you're tricking yourself. It's still a naivety. No, it's cultivating a loving relationship to your shadow realms, all those things.
What are some practical strategies to become more present? Like, I've definitely experienced overthinking.
Haven't we all?
How do we become more present? I feel like for a lot of my life, it's been thinking about the past, thinking about the future. How does this choice affect the future? And just this maze in my head, right? But I know how good it is to be present, and how much joy and love can just be from the present moment. But practically, it can be hard to do because we're so conditioned to live a different way. What are some simple practical strategies to help guide us and ground us in presence and stopping our mind from ticking over?
There's two things you can use, two different fields, two different domains to address this. One is physical, so being aware of your physical body, the sensations, because they're happening right now. It's the most truest thing. Like, this is happening in my body. The other side is a bit of mental gymnastics, conceptualizing, wriggling into an idea where the future doesn't exist and the past doesn't exist. So it's an idea. So that's what I mean. It's the mental sphere, the mental domain, recognizing that there is no past, there is no future. They're actually both illusions. That's a true statement. The past doesn't exist anymore. It's remembered in your mind, but it doesn't exist, right? And so you've extracted a whole bunch of stories about the past, and because of your higher order thinking, you can remember a whole bunch of it. And so that's essentially the source of mental suffering, is because of an attachment to the past, because of a good memory, essentially, because I remember so much. I'm debilitated by it, and then I project into the future because of all my fears of the past, and then I fear the future as well. And so there's this imagine an hourglass sideways. You got this middle moment where it's you, the present moment, the here and now, and then you got this expansion of one side, which is all things of the past, and then all things of the future, projections, ideas, right? From both of those sides don't exist. Like, the future can't ever really be now, because all that exists is now. There's just a whole bunch of ideas. What if I don't get that job? What if she rejects me? What if I'm not good enough? What if I make a mistake? What ifs, the big what ifs, right? They don't actually exist. That reality is brought into the here and now because of a story of that projection. So all you do is, to give you a practical example, a practical tool that you might be looking for, I'll just always ask someone to recognize that, firstly, because you're going to be sitting there, everyone does this, you'll sit there one day and you're staring at something blindly. You're in self-hypnosis and you're just catastrophizing everything. You're like, oh, what if this, and what about that? What if that? What if this? Or if I do that? And then you've gone this massive journey of the mind of all things that don't even exist. To bring that back, okay, what if she doesn't love me? All that kind of stuff. Those fears, would you bring it back to just, okay, what is actually real right now? What is in front of me? And it might be in the context of a relationship to make it real. What's right now? Well, no, I have an individual that is the same as me in terms of a child of the earth fumbling through this world, trying to find love the same way I am, flawed, just like me. Okay, is there a capacity for love there? Yeah, okay. What's the right way to go about that? Can we move towards forgiveness of all things? It means let go of the entire past. let go of an attachment to needing to make anything happen, and then you just meet someone. So if this is in the context of a relationship, meeting someone with a fresh slate, right? This is so powerful, very hard to do though, is to look at an individual like they are not the evil which she was yesterday or he was 3 days ago. Of all the things that the divine, get it, and it's meaningful in terms of cultivating a pathway, but an honoring of that we are flawed individuals and we will fumble through this life. What that does is a forgiveness of the past. That's how you release the past, is a forgiveness and an acceptance of the past, of all things. Releasing them, releasing yourself. Those are the first two key qualities. And then if you can get to gratitude, gratitude's the final one. But that's how you release the mind. So the mental domain of the past is the forgiveness of all things.
What if people are going to say straight away, like, I've been wronged by these people in my life.
Yeah.
Like, why would I forgive someone who's done that?
Good point. Good question. And in the context is, let's take it to the extreme. I've had clients that were sexually abused, and horrifically by people that you would like to assume that you should trust, right? Family members, things like that. Now, in one in particular, she said to me, why should I forgive that person? It's like, yeah, I get it. You know, and you can take your anger and resentment, because she's sitting with resentment, frustration, anger, all those things. And when I say share, I mean, there's many clients that have been in the same position. There's not one individual, but there's been a few of this same category. Why should I forgive that person? It's like, good point. What tier of philosophy or principles are you measuring by? Because if it's social, just a social measurement, yeah, that behavior is wrong. Good. But if we stop there and we don't have a transcendental belief that you are the one that is the creator of this existence and all the chemistry of this body, you're the one that develops all the stories. What do you want to do with your body, right? If you seek freedom, then what should you do about the freedom of your body? Well, releasing all things. What is in the domain of love? Because that's freedom, forgiveness, gratitude, joy. How can I, Boris, then when they did this, this, and this, it's like, I get it. No one said it's easy. But if I stop at the social tier of principle and say, yeah, that's bad behavior and your anger is justified, and stop there. I mean, give that little girl a voice who was abused. Say, damn you, F you abused me. Let it out. But don't stop there, because that's where that person's been stuck their entire life. It's like the resentment and a social justification for their anger and resentment, because it's bad. It's like, so everyone around them will validate their anger and frustration. It's like, I get you. Yeah, man, that bastard, right? It's like, but if you really care about this person, you want them to be free, you take them to forgiveness, because that frees them. You know, you don't do it for the other person. That's why this is the leap. It's being the bigger person. You don't do it for them because it's nothing to do with them. If you get stuck at the social measurement, you only see ego, you only see separation, them versus me, red team versus blue team, you're playing at a lower plane of consciousness. Do you seek freedom? Yes. You have to transcend that density, that egoic social level of judgment. You have to transcend, or else you will be stuck. So what do you want? I want freedom. Okay, then are you ready to forgive, or at least approach the idea of forgiveness? No, F that bastard. Okay, cool. Maybe next week then. They come back later on. But you don't get to your inner freedom. When I say inner, it means you feel the forgiveness. Like you don't just, oh yeah, I forgive that person. It's a nice idea, but every time that someone mentions that name, it's like yep. So it's going to be a process of letting go of the energy that you've accumulated, freeing the stories of the mind that I was abused, I wasn't honored, they disrespected me, I'm not safe, men are all bad. It's forgiveness of the masculine, forgiveness of the mistakes by seeing them as, what do you have to do? See them as children fumbling through this life as well. This is where spirituality comes in. If I see them as a version of me that's here to teach me something, wow, what a powerful switch of a story. This was here to teach me something about myself. If I can only overcome the resentment, frustration, anger, see the value in what this has created for me. It's so hard, and I get it's hard. There's nothing there, Boris. It just effed me up. It's like, yep, I get it. It obviously looks like that, but you will remain stuck. We have the capacity to free ourselves, and it doesn't come from their apology. It may never come, and they may die as well. Then what? Are you stuck forever? No, it all comes from inside. You have to move towards the feeling of freedom, which the next stage is a transcendental philosophy or principle that it's not about them. It never was. It was always about you. Therefore, you forgive them by transcending social justifications, and you forgive. And then the last step is gratitude, to actually be grateful for the experience. I've been laughed at. Boris, you telling me I should be grateful that I was sexually abused by this person? Yeah, I know how it sounds. But if we can work towards what it means and why we are moving towards it. We don't have to do it now. I'm not saying because it's too jarring, right? Because you're still in reactive mode to it. There's a lot of frustration, anger, and I get it. You've been hurt, right? But if we don't move towards freedom for your soul, for your body, forgiveness, and then gratitude, you can say goodbye to the idea of freedom. You have distraction that'll feel like freedom, but it won't be freedom.
But I feel like a lot of people hold on to the anger because it gives them that control, which is what they want when they've been hurt.
They want the anger?
They want the control, but the control comes from having the anger towards the situation. So,
yep.
So how do people sort of let go of that need to, or that how do they let go of that anger when it's serving them by protecting them, by giving them that control? Those generalizations, those stories.
And control, as in control of what?
Control of pain, by the stories and, not letting that happen again.
Yeah. So first of all, anger's anger. Yeah, good on you. It's an emotion, but it's not a healthy emotion, you could say. It's necessary and you can draw upon it. It has utility. If you ever come across a psychopath, you want to be able to draw upon some negative energy. You have to almost become a monster yourself to push back on someone difficult. So but sustaining something for the sake of social justification is like just saying, okay, I hate this person, I want them to die, but I'm drinking the poison. That's what anger is. Because there's nothing good about the chemistry of anger, right? It's unsustainable. So, okay, well, if you can give someone the option to be free, then good. Okay, so understanding what's it controlling. It's controlling a more vulnerable emotion. Anger is a secondary emotion. Anger only comes after not being able to have any power around a vulnerability, a sadness, a grief, abandonment, loss, rejection, unworthiness, all that stuff. So that when we can't do anything about those deeper emotions, powerlessness, vulnerabilities, like we will then kick in something more socially appropriate as a way of moving the energy, controlling the more vulnerable parts by employing anger. That the anger is a way of trying to go close to it, but never really dipping your toes in the essence of what's the true emotion that's there. So you can, good. It'll help you survive, but it won't sustain you. You can't sustain yourself for a long time if you think you're going to have meaningful relationships with freedom, characterized by freedom. You won't get there. So if your question was around, well, how do you get them to let go of that when it's serving them for good? It's like, well, you'd have to get them to see the value in letting it go. Right now, they only see value in holding it, the anger. So you'd have to help them understand, firstly, the detriment of holding that, and then the value of letting it go, because it's only a one version story. It's like a one-sided story saying this is good for me to hold this anger, and it's helping me control. It's like, good, but have a look at the quality of relationships. Why are you here with me in a therapeutic setting? Why are you still so reactive to certain things? It's like, that means you're not in control of your body. That means the external world still owns you. When you see a man or you're close to love or something good, the love is right there, but you reject it. You're impulsive, you're defensive, irrational. You're pushing away love and you don't have any choice. So you're a victim of your own body, your own mind. And you're not willing to see that the anger has something to do with that. Right? So you have to get them closer to truth. Accept that that's not actually serving them for good. It just helps them stay away from more vulnerable emotions that they don't want to go near. But it's not true.
Next segment, we'll speed through these last couple. The audience one. So I had a lot of requests about the craziest stories. Obviously, this is what I'm sure everyone asks you. So you do past life regressions, which we haven't really gone into today, but essentially through the hypnosis, you're able to, well, I guess you could take a step back and say there's a bit of context that sort of needs to be understood in terms of like there being a soul and us having like past lives, which you could quickly explain before the next bit. But yeah, so before you share a story, maybe explain that whole concept of like what a past life is and what that sort of means. And then I guess a story, because I've seen some of the other stuff, I guess a story that is most memorable for you to sort of, I guess, make you believe that there are past lives and this is a reality.
Yeah. Yeah, when it became real. All right, yeah. Because I'm thinking of the stories that I have shared with others and thinking one that I haven't shared so I can make it sort of a first time here as well for you. So firstly, the idea of past lives. So my master's research went down into looking into the concept of transmigration of the soul. Is that, if the theory is if energy doesn't die, is our consciousness a part of that energy? Is the consciousness that is the I, the Boris right now, the experiencing self that's always there? Is that part of the energy that never dies? And if so, where does it go? And am I still aware of stuff in the way that Boris is now? These are the questions that generate it. So then we look at phenomena. So my research went down the path of looking at the phenomenal things that have happened. And without going into all the context of that research and stuff, I'll just tell you the statement that I can affirmatively and confidently say. That is that your body, your mind and body, is emotionally and physically connected, let's say entangled with other lifetimes that are no longer here or might be here, no longer here. Time doesn't really matter, but it's like there is enough evidence now to show that there is crossovers physically and mentally with other lifetimes in a way that is not explainable by what they call bioreductive materialist philosophies of science, modern science. We have meaningful connections to other lifetimes. And what does that mean? It just means that the DNA that you hold is not just purely based on lineage, your parents and your experience and development of your identity is not purely based on your physical experience here. The philosophy that goes with the materialist philosophy of science is what they call tabula rasa. You're born with a blank slate. Then you cultivate all that you know, but you can't know things prior, right? So it's the philosophy of what they call the field of philosophy called epistemology, how humans acquire knowledge. How do you know what you know? At some point you would have heard this or heard that, but you would have heard on another podcast maybe that there was that young fella that dropped into another lifetime in Egypt where he spoke ancient Egyptian or seemed like that language anyway. Which was confirmed by that ancient linguistics professor. But it's like, how does that person acquire that knowledge? Or to talk about the Sumerian tablets, which he did. This dude was a painter by trade, tattoos all over him, no judgment to him, but not the most literate or researched person, kind of bogan sort of dude, a very young age, 21-year-old fella, no spiritual bone in him either. And why was he there all of a sudden telling me about the Anunnaki? The Anunnaki being it was what they were termed in the Sumerian tablets that were dug up from Sumer, which were Mesopotamian times, ancient times. And he was, with accuracy, names. I'd have to research books to find out what he was talking about. Described what Zecharia Sitchin was putting in his book called The 12th Planet. Because he translated a lot of those Sumerian tablets that were dug up about their ancient history. They spoke about people of the sky, beings that were here. But what makes it interesting, I'm not getting to the validation of that story or the historical origins, but more so, how did this client drop into the knowledge of these ancient texts with accuracy? He could tell me names of cities, names of rulers, and woke up with no clue of what I was talking about. Never heard of those things. Used language that he'd never even heard of before. And so, therefore, if I could prove that, in which it already has before, that this person has acquired knowledge and proven knowledge that is beyond his physical experience, therefore his consciousness is not bound by his physical body. So then the question arises, well, where the hell does it come from then? And then when we look at other phenomena where you'll see entanglements with other bodies, children research where they start talking about another lifetime, the name of who they were, where they died, how they died, who killed them maybe even, what they did for work in that other lifetime. Kids around the age of 4 years old, plenty of research from the University of Virginia showing the entanglement is the best way to describe it. There is a meaningful connection shared here with this person's body and that body over there. Well, I'm not getting into it's their body and they were over there. It's like, no, it's more complex than that. It's not their body. It's like, but there is a meaningful connection through consciousness, through the energy, the essence that is connected to this other time. Why? What does it mean? That's more of a philosophical question, but it seems to be that it's their task in that moment to overcome it, to resolve it. So instead of saying, okay, this trauma, where does trauma come from? Why are they stuck the way they are? Why they have phobias like this? Rather than just looking at this current life, open up. How do we open up their consciousness to allow it and them to explore wherever it came from? So get our beliefs out the way, and we're finding that people will just go to other lifetimes. Yeah.
Interesting, because I think we try and, especially logically, we try and understand our lives from what we remember.
Mm-hmm.
But not only do we have to uncover subconsciously what's happened to us in our childhood, now we have to uncover what's happened to us and our soul in different lifetimes.
Someone said to me when I was presenting my research at the university, they said, so it's hard enough to find trauma origins in this life. Say there's 1,000 lifetimes. Which one are we meant to find? Which one do we look for? And how do we know? It's like, well, that's the wrong way to think about it. It's a very human way to think about it, right? What I'm saying is that we're finding an intelligence in this person that if their ego is rested, meaning all the things that they think are important, it's just all ego stories. You rest that and you will find that their subconscious mind will be willing to explore the ether, all that is, right? And it will, by default, go to the thing that's most important for that person in that moment. And if you're saying, okay, this person has a fear of relationships with men, this woman's come in abusive cycle and one after the other with men, sucks at relationships. She doesn't know why. She's done all the therapy, can't figure it out. Put her in hypnosis. All of a sudden, she's just skated across 3 different lifetimes, where the themes were being killed and beaten up by these men. Okay, all right. So rather than saying the validity or realistic that life was there, but it's showing us, her subconscious mind is showing us a theme going through her consciousness of being abused by the masculine, feeling powerlessness, So there's a theme here that she's here to resolve. And it's playing itself out in this lifetime as well. Okay, so forget the scientific validity of it. Now it's therapeutic. So what? There's lifetimes. Okay, but the subconscious mind just showed us that there is a theme running through her consciousness, running through her DNA. She's perpetuating a cycle of abuse, being a victim to the masculine. Okay, what should we do about that? Trust me, the subconscious mind knows exactly what to do with it. It's as if you're working, that's why people say angels, guides, they come to you and they know exactly what to say to you. You experience a similar sort of thing with past loved ones, very common, and they will tell you exactly what needs to happen, how to let go of old fears. So she's perpetuating them because she still believes she is a victim to the masculine, until one day she wakes up and sees the irrationality. No, that I'm actually allowed to speak my truth now. But she was killed in all these lifetimes, you could say, for speaking her truth, being treated as a witch maybe. Who knows? She was an intuitive person. Now it's up to her to see that tendency, the egoic tendency to be victimized by the masculine, excessively compensate and go into man-bashing ideas as well, to find the peace in that and recognize, no, I'm actually allowed to speak my truth. I'm allowed to be intuitive now. I don't deserve that kind of behavior, that kind of treatment, and I don't have to go on a man-hating rant either. When she resolves that inner fear, returns to balance, love, acceptance of herself, freedom of her expression, it's like a collapsing of timelines. Those lifetimes almost don't matter anymore. It's like she's resolved it. And the idea is, well, if she's effectively resolved it, understood it, extracted wisdom from it, let go of the emotion associated with the powerlessness and fear, her relationships get better. Yeah, she's more free in her relationships. And so the subconscious mind knows. It knows where to take you. So forget which lifetime do I go to. It's like, no, your subconscious mind knows where to take you.
It's interesting. With hypnosis, how do we validate that these memories are actually being real and not just, the brain creating a vision to explain, like a trauma origin to explain why something happens? It's so intelligent, it could easily come up with and manufacture a story or a vision. Is it because you've seen, it's just aware of things that are just so unexplainable, other than the fact that it has to be, because there's proof from like the Bogan guy coming in and him reciting ancient texts, for example. It's just so unfathomable for his mind to be able to make that up. Is that just what's convinced you?
Yeah, you could say linguistic styles change, language changes, is what they call xenoglossy, where they speak other languages they shouldn't know. I mean, you would have seen in my research paper, so Peter Ramster was an Australian researcher and psychotherapist as well, and and he hypnotized a bunch of people. But he found that this one of the girls was speaking French. She just started speaking French while she was Australian, no French history. They said, she found when she was like 12 years old, she took a few French classes, but the degree to which she was speaking French, they got a translator in, and the translator said she's not even speaking current French, she's speaking an ancient French, like an older version of French. And it was in the context of her lifetime that she was remembering or going through, and so she dropped into the consciousness of that body in that timeline and could access language that was not even of this time. In that same research by Peter Ramster, they also found that this lady who was in England, somewhere in the 1800s, I can't remember the exact date, but she was dropping in and started using terminology that was only localized for that town, like a word talent. A talent was a word in that particular, not even in that town now in England. It was only used back then 200 years ago in that town for what this particular building was called a talent. So there she was in Australia, never left Australia in her life. In 1981, this was done. There was no internet, to go and research these things. She had no history of family over there either. But there she was, dropping into a linguistic style. It was of that time, And so, it's even more evidence when she was describing a particular stone that was in that house at that address where she lived. They went to that place in England, found the address. That was now turned into a barn. There was now mud. The ducks or the geese were living in there, but they had a layer of mud over the floor. They actually got a team in and asked the owners if they could actually remove all the mud to see if they could find this particular stone that had a very distinct carving on it that she drew while she was in Australia under hypnosis, remembering this at a lifetime 200 years ago. House is still there. They removed all the mud and they found this stone with that marking that she drew right in the middle of where she said it was. Even said there was a window right in this particular part of the building. When they got there, it was all bricked up. There was nothing there. It's not there. But then when they went in, on the inside, there was a wooden frame of where it was on the inside of it. And so she knew the layout of this house from never being in this house, So how did she acquire that knowledge?
It's hard to deny, isn't it? That's
right. So again, who knows how or why false? I'm sure, and there is elements of falsehoods in there. It's like a dream, you're going to have random things in there, inserting things in there. So I don't think it comes with complete accuracy, but you'll see that there is a tendency, and there's enough evidence to say that we can acquire knowledge beyond our physical experience from other bodies that aren't our own. But it will be distorted at times with other ideas, contortions of fear of this lifetime as well. It doesn't really matter. So there's a scientific pursuit of that, and then there's a therapeutic pursuit of that. Scientifically, you're looking for evidence. What we just spoke about, Peter Ramster's work, and there's enough evidence there. Dr. Ian Stevenson, Dr. Jim Tucker, from the University of Virginia, the School of Medicine, plenty of evidence to suggest that we're connected meaningfully to other lifetimes. So I'm not concerned about that anymore. What I'm concerned about is the therapeutic element. Like, how do we, so what? Who cares that you've just uncovered all these lifetimes, right? Yep, now that we know magic is real, isn't it what we're saying? So well done, now what? it's like, okay, well, how does it lead to a more meaningful life? Why is it coming up now for this person? Do I need to prove it to heal this person? No, I realize now, like, so I'm sure there's a bunch of falsehoods in there. There's some realistic elements, and there's an actual lifetime they're probably uncovering. Once I got over this magic is real sort of skepticism, and like I was trying to test everything because I'm like, this is too much for me. Once I got over that hump of needing to prove everything, I could meet the person for the therapeutic side, which is like, I don't need to prove whether it's real or not, but there's a reason why it's coming up now. And if I can just meet this person where they're at, they're trying to tell me something. Their mind, their subconscious, their higher self, their angels, whatever you want. It's trying to tell me something about the nature of this person and what they need to get on with. So just stay with the themes of it. Look for the underlying messages. Don't get caught up on the proving of the identity of the things, the locations, the detail. Don't get caught up. And I've been told by clients under trance, they're channeling these higher beings of intelligence, that they're telling me, don't get caught up. You're asking the wrong questions. They're telling me you're asking the wrong questions. Because I was saying, okay, well, is that a past life, or is that like another dimension sort of thing? Like I started asking real philosophical questions around trying to grasp the concept of this. Many times it is you're asking the wrong question. It's irrelevant. It's like, okay, sorry. What should I ask? And so that's what's funny, because they guide me in these states. It's like there's an intelligence in them that guides me. You're asking the wrong questions, Boris. Oh, sorry about that. I say, yep, it's irrelevant. It's the theme. They're actually, so someone was like dropping into a duck life. That literally, I don't know if it's real or not, but I'm floating on water. Okay. Are you on top of the water, in the water? I'm on top of the water. What do you feel? I feel like I'm a bird. Okay. Can you look at yourself? I'm a duck. You're a duck. Okay. Yeah. And this happens heaps at some animal. And then, okay, all right. This is the right question. What does it feel like? Because early on I was like, okay, what year is it? What's the date? So I'm trying to find the validity so I can nail it. That's where it was. I was doing that with many lives. Now it's like, what does it feel like? I feel really calm, really present, to the point that it shocks them. It's like, the past doesn't even exist. The future doesn't even exist. I'm so here. They're experiencing life from this duck's body, and they're having a profound, felt, embodied experience of what it's like to be so present. What we were trying to do, we're talking about. So it's like something in their higher consciousness, I didn't prompt it, has taken them to a theme of presence in the extreme. Who does it better than a duck? So why? It's because this person that's in your therapy room, Boris, wants to know what it's like to be present. They struggle with presence. They are victimed to their mind, their stories. And they are curious, or they want to know. They didn't even come in asking, but their subconscious knew. And it just gave them the feeling of what it's like to be present. Why is that important? Because that feeling never leaves them. They're not always blissing out like a duck, but they have felt it. Now they can't delete that from their mind. They wake up, whoa, that's what it's like to be present. And you can't explain it. You can't recreate it to somebody else. You can't give them the duck experience. You got to feel this. No, there's nothing you can do. But that person now knows what it feels like to have no past, no future. And it's like, that's worthy of attaining. How do I get closer to that? And it compels them into action. So again, the duck doesn't matter. The timeline of the duck. Was it a real duck? It doesn't matter, right? So I put that in the context of other bodies, other lifetimes as well. It's like, don't get caught up on the date, the validation of it. But there's a reason why this person's experiencing it. Stay with that. So you were asking about a story of something significant that was sort of proving, or at least shaped the existence of this phenomenal thing. So a lot of my clients have become psychic. Not a lot, it's some of them. Some of them have become psychic in nature. And we're talking about people that were either religious or some atheists as well, that come in with a belief already rigid and quite adamant of no psychic ability is quite foreign or non-existent. And they have dropped into a psychic ability. So an example of this was a particular male. How old was he? He was 29 at the time. And at this time, I was in my final year of master's research, and a lot of the fellow students, my colleagues, they were very curious about what was happening in my practice at the time as well. And a particular lady was asking if she could ever watch. A lot of them were asking, can I just come in and watch one of these sessions that were happening to see these phenomenal things? And it lined up where a particular kind of mind who had shown a capacity to drop in, and he was devout Christian Catholic, are very against psychic stuff. He thinks it was all diabolic, demonic stuff, you know. He had this capacity to see my life while he was in trance. So he could tell me my grandfather's name and all this stuff with accuracy. I was like, okay, now this is a thing, you know. So anyway, it lined up where he was willing to come in because I needed an emergency session, and at the same time I was going to catch up with a particular fellow colleague, a lady who was atheist, adamant, and really needed to see this to believe it, right? And so it just lined up where I was like, okay, cool, maybe I can give both of these people an experience. Asked him if he'd be okay with one of my colleagues watching, sitting in, and she's a fellow psychotherapist, and he's like, yep, no worries. They never met before. They met on the day, shook hands. This is so and so. This is so and so. Cool. My colleague just sat at my desk, and I had the couch going. Dropped him in, did our thing. The session lasted about 2 hours, and there was a particular towards the end of it, when he's deep in trance and he's seeing all the visions and stuff like that. He starts pointing over to where she is, and he just like physically pointing towards her, and he says, "There's someone on her right. She's got nice hair." He's doing this with his hand. She's got nice hair like this with curls. She's showing me her earrings as well. She's very proud of her earrings, her image. She's an old lady. She's saying it's her grandmother, this person's grandmother, and she said her name. I won't say a name on here in case it's too close to the identity, but said the name of this person, what they were saying their name was. And then, there's someone on the other side of this person, and this tall man, bald head here, hair on the sides here. He's saying his name is so-and-so. And then he's saying he's very proud of her. He's very proud of her for doing the psychology stuff. And he's saying sorry. He wants me to tell her that he's sorry for the way things went down, the way he died. It would have really just jarred her. And so he wanted my client to pass my colleague this message, so I'm sort of just, okay, cool. We come out of it, and he goes off to the toilet to sort of gather himself. And I asked my colleague there, she's sitting there, and she's like, had her head on the desk and like a bit silent. She was a big talk, but she goes to me, "I'm lost for words for the first time in my life." She's like, "That's impossible." It's like, the woman he described next to me is my grandmother, and that's my grandmother's name. And that's what she was known for, being very dainty in her earrings and an image. And the guy who he just described is my dad. That's his name. And he's tall, bald head with hair on the sides here, and he died in my arms 4 years ago. And she was just dumbfounded because there was no way he could have known the names of her grandfather and father who died. And so when he came back from the toilet, I said, "Hey, do you remember those people you saw next to so-and-so?" And he's like, "Yeah, what was with that? Like, that was weird." And I said, "Yeah, that was her grandmother. She just validated that was her name, and that's her father." And he's just, "Oh my God." And it shocked him because he didn't know he could do that. Everyone was shocked in there.
That's crazy. Can these sidekicks, because a lot of this is like the knowing of the past, right? Like a remembering, as we said, the past doesn't exist, but remembering. What about future casting, like predicting the future? Where does this all tie in?
Yeah, that's happened. Again, I don't get caught up on, is it true, is it not true? It's nice when someone validates, "Hey, Boris," I get that call and they're like, "Yeah, remember that vision I had of my future?" And yeah, it turns out the guy I met, he is that name. It's like, oh, cool. Again, you can go down the path of, well, did she look for that guy? It doesn't matter. Again, what matters, but yes, it does happen. And it's about why are they seeing this? Like the duck body, it's about what's the feeling that they're getting while in that, and what's it doing to their belief systems or stories of their mind. All of a sudden, it gives them hope. It gives them something to fight for, something to look forward to. it lets them know there's a possibility of love, and this is what it looks like, because they might be quite nihilistic and hopeless about life, giving up. So something in them, some guide or something of an intelligence says they need to see this vision of the future, and it gives it to them. I might not prompt it either, but it's just, I'm seeing this, I'm seeing that, oh my God. And it gives them this feeling that it might not be this exact image, but there is something about this feeling that waits for you. Life is about the feeling of everything, not how it's dressed up. What do you want to feel? I'd like to feel like I'm in a family. I feel what it's like to be bonded with someone. Yep, here's the image. And some weird way, that it's a future vision. And what it does to the client, it just compels them into motivation. Something's worth fighting for here.
What is your thoughts on dreams? I just had a thought about it, but is this all tied in somehow?
Yeah, dreams is that's the shadow. The dream is the subconscious, the wilderness that we always speak about. So all things that are unseen, all things that create this reality from your deep subconscious realm. It's because when you're sleeping, your ego is at rest. You're not resting, your ego is resting. The identity's resting, your body's resting, but there is you still observing and feeling and playing in some reality, right? Distorted in some way, but that you're still experiencing. So, you know what I mean? There's always an experiencing you, but it's the random content of the subconscious realms of your existence, your fears, your desires, the repressed content, and then dreams. Now we understand because you're connected to the collective unconscious, all these other lifetimes. So it can be random visions and things that might not even be part of your physical life as well, but from the collective unconscious, we call it the one mind memory. So all the lifetimes, and there'll be signatures that are relevant for you. Like we've had heaps of people uncover things from dreams. Helped out police officers. I had a dream about this thing, and yep, it's accurate. I've helped. So you can dreams have the capacity, because like hypnosis, you put the ego to rest. You can tap into the collective unconscious. Someone that practices lucid dreaming, a bit more accurate.
Yeah, I used to be able to do that when I was younger, but I have this fear of like the deep oceans. And when I was a kid, I remember having nightmares about getting chased by sharks. Is there a possibility in some lifetime I was in a shark attack or something?
Yeah, so theoretically, so it wouldn't be your lifetime. The best way to think about that is there is something in your DNA. If you haven't experienced nothing crazy with the ocean this life, right? Let's just cancel that out for the assumption, right? What's happening is there is something in your DNA that is drawing upon memories of the one mind, so all of humanity's past. There is signatures of your DNA that is associated, or what I was saying, entangled with another lifetime that may have experienced a death from a shark. Whether it's a human body or it's an animal body that was getting attacked by a shark, who knows? But there is something about the feeling that came from that, which is usually fear-based. In that fear-based thing is like it's up to you to transmute that. So if it's coming up in a dream, it's like, okay, there's something in your essence, in your consciousness, in your field, your ether, your subconscious realm that is that is associated to the fear of that. And is it a lifetime? Maybe, but it could also be a projection, like a metaphorical image as well, if you're having dreams about it. But so it could be any possibilities of both, because we've had research around kids having dreams, flying planes, crashing, a lot of destruction, fear around these repeated dreams, and found out that, there was an actual person that they were remembering and from their death of dying in a plane. And they found it and validated it. So it could be, but it also could be metaphorical as well.
Yeah, it's been awesome to hear some of this stuff. And I mean, these conversations, it's hard to get into everything. There's just so much.
There's so much, man. Yeah. But no, you had a good crack. You had a lot of questions to uncover it. So I'd say thank you for at least pursuing this topic that most people are afraid to go near. And I hope it wakes someone up to just ask more questions about themselves and take more accountability. Recognize that this whole life happens through them, not anyone else. So go into the accountability route and ask more questions courageously. Pursue that voice of spiritual growth, like courage, meaning.
And act like a duck.
Act like a duck. Become the duck.
Thanks, Boris.
You're welcome.